very interesting. There was a march in East London on Saturday, all men, all dressed in black, most with face masks, and they were protesting about an anti-Islamic extremist demo that in fact was banned.
Britain is spiraling, and everyone knows it. Not in some distant, hypothetical future. Not in theory. Right now, in broad daylight, mobs are storming barricades, police are retreating, and violent criminals are being released en masse legally. This isn't tabloid hysteria. It's policy. And it's happening under the watch of a government that seems more committed to optics and international approval than the safety and stability of its own citizens. Let's talk about SDS-40. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss. Like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. If you haven't heard of it, you're probably not alone, and that's part of the problem. It's a scheme that allows convicted criminals to serve just 40% of their prison sentence before being released. 40%. That means people convicted of violent crimes, extremism, or gang-related activity are walking free years, sometimes decades, before the public thought they'd ever be out. As of now, over 40,000 criminals have re-entered society under this policy. The results? Exactly what you'd expect. Violent crime is rising. Machete attacks, lootings, riots. And in many cases, these aren't random outbursts. They are calculated, organized, and fueled by a complete breakdown of consequences. The streets aren't just unsafe, they're unpredictable. And the institutions meant to handle this, they are stretched thin, overwhelmed, and in many cases, outright backing down. We've seen the footage. Rioters smashing through police cordons while officers fall back. Not regrouping, retreating. It's not a lack of bravery. It's a lack of support. These aren't rare incidents. They are becoming routine. So why is this happening? Because the government, under Prime Minister Starmer, has made leniency a central policy strategy. It's not even subtle anymore. From the courts to the border, the philosophy is clear: de-escalate, downplay, and release. The public is told it's about reform, about fairness, but all it's creating is a system where law-abiding citizens pay the price while offenders get a second, third, and fourth chance. The SDS-40 scheme is just the tip of it. The migrant crisis is a whole other iceberg. Thousands of undocumented migrants are arriving in Britain daily. That's not political spin. That's the data. Small boats crossing the channel have become a symbol of the state's inability or unwillingness to control its own borders. And once they arrive, many are processed, briefly detained, and then released into communities, even when there's a criminal background involved. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. Authorities insist on due process, but the loopholes are wide enough to sail through. Claims of persecution, gaps in documentation, appeals that drag on for years. All of it works in favor of the entrant, not the system, or the community expected to absorb them. The result? Overcrowded prisons, collapsing infrastructure, and rising social tension. Not to mention political powder keg created when residency local services, funded by their taxes, redirected towards supporting new arrivals instead of addressing domestic needs. NHS wait times are up, housing shortages are worsening, and resentment is growing. Meanwhile, the government's focus seems almost deliberately misplaced. Climate emergency declarations, globalist posturing, bureaucratic reshuffles, anything but the crisis on the ground. There's an almost surreal disconnect between what people are living through and what's being prioritized in Westminster. Let's break it down further. Law enforcement, underfunded, undermanned, demoralized. Police forces are no longer a deterrent. In many cases, they are spectators. In the worst cases, they are targets. The judiciary, politicized, soft on sentencing. Judges more concerned with avoiding headlines than enforcing the law. The message is loud and clear. If you're a foreign national or have extremist views, the system will bend over backwards to accommodate you. But if you're a British citizen defending your home or speaking out too loudly, you're on thin ice. This is what a managed decline looks like. It's not a collapse all at once. It's a slow, procedural disintegration of authority, sovereignty, and social cohesion. And it's often dressed up in the language of progress, inclusivity, reform, fairness, all while neighborhoods are destabilized, institutions eroded, and public trust obliterated. And yes, the economic picture is just as bleak. Inheritance taxes are strangling small landowners and farmers. Small businesses are shutting down under the weight of insurance premiums, vandalism, and theft. High streets are emptying. Meanwhile, billions are funneled into migrant housing, legal aid for deportation appeals, and cultural integration schemes that produce very little integration. It's not that the country can't afford to fix things. It's that the money is being spent elsewhere, on international image, on programs that win applause from abroad while failing people at home. All of this, crime, migration, economic decay, isn't happening in a vacuum. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. It's rooted in policy. These aren't accidents or unfortunate trends. They are the direct results of decisions made at the highest levels of power. And people are done waiting. The protests, the barricades, the clashes in the streets, these aren't just outbursts. They are desperate reactions to a government that many feel has turned its back on them. And whether you agree with the form those protests take or not, it's impossible to ignore the cause. There's a collective sense of betrayal, a growing belief that national interest has been replaced with international obligations, that sovereignty is being traded away for treaties, and treaties that benefit everyone except the people actually living in Britain. This isn't about left versus right. It's about the collapse of a basic social contract, one where citizens uphold the law, pay taxes, and trust the state to protect them. That contract is fraying fast, and the cracks are no longer just visible, they are gaping. Culturally, it's just as disorienting. British values, whatever's left of them, are being diluted under the banner of multiculturalism to the point where cohesion is being replaced with fragmentation. And when people speak out, they are dismissed, labeled, silenced, because acknowledging the erosion of national identity is now considered more dangerous than the erosion itself. Even Britain's legal sovereignty is up for grabs. International courts override domestic decisions. Policies are shaped around compliance with foreign frameworks. It's no longer clear who holds a final say over British laws, British borders, or British values. And through all this, what do we hear from leadership? Deflection, platitudes, call for resilience and unity. But unity around what? A shared belief in pretending things are fine? The truth is, they're not, and people aren't buying it anymore. The rise in violent crime, the riots, the failing institutions, the economic stress, none of it is an isolated issue. It's all part of a wider pattern, a state that's managing decline instead of preventing it. That's talking reform while creating rot. That's pushing progressive slogans while letting core structures fall apart. So where does this go? The fear isn't just more chaos. It's normalization, that the public will become so used to dysfunction that dysfunction becomes a new baseline, that lawlessness becomes part of daily life, that political abandonment becomes expected, that people start to accept the unacceptable. And that's the real danger. Because once trust is broken, truly broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. And right now, trust in Britain's leadership, in its justice system, in its ability to protect its own people, is not just low, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. It's collapsing. The choice isn't whether people are angry. They are. The choice is whether that anger leads to reform or rupture, because a nation can survive hardship, but it cannot survive a government that denies reality. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, or even just cathartic, make sure to hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and drop a comment with your thoughts. How do you see this unfolding? What's the breaking point? And don't forget to subscribe if you want more real talk on the chaos we're all living through. Because this isn't going away. It's easy to look at Britain right now and feel like you're watching a nation on autopilot, gliding straight into turbulence, while the people in charge casually sip tea in the cockpit and refuse to admit there's even a storm ahead. You've got mobs taking over streets, criminals walking out of prison early like they are clocking off from a job, entire neighborhoods living under the weight of fear and confusion. And yet the official response seems frozen in place, locked in a loop of denial, distraction, and diluted responsibility. Because let's be honest, this isn't just a failure of policy. It's a collapse in leadership. At every level, there's this overwhelming sense that no one's really in charge, or worse, that the people who are in charge have no idea what they are doing, or simply don't care. Let's go back to the police. The ones actually on the front lines. 4 years, there's been a slow, silent retreat. First, it was a lack of presence. Stations shutting down. Foot patrols disappearing. Entire towns seeing fewer and fewer uniforms. Then came the morale problem. Officers reporting burnout, budget cuts, and a growing sense that the system they serve won't back them up. Now, it's full-blown disengagement. During riots, they don't intervene. During violent protests, they are told to stand down. The message is clear: don't escalate. But what happens when that strategy is the escalation? What happens when doing nothing becomes a reason everything explodes? It's not just public perception anymore, it's lived reality. The people in those neighborhoods, they are not feeling protected. They are feeling abandoned. Watching as the institutions that once held the line now fold under pressure, or worse, avoid the pressure altogether. And while law enforcement retreats, what fills the gap? Organized gangs, extremist groups, opportunistic criminals. When the state steps back, chaos steps in. And this isn't a vague trend, it's measurable. Shops are closing not because of market shifts, but because of vandalism and looting. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. Insurance rates in urban areas are skyrocketing. Public transportation is becoming dangerous at night. This isn't fear-mongering, it's policy fallout. And the courts? They are not providing a safety net either. Time and time again, the system ups for leniency. Someone with a violent history gets released because they've shown potential. A known radical avoids deportation due to legal technicalities. A gang member caught with a weapon gets probation. It's like watching a game where no one keeps score, and the rules change based on how controversial the referee wants to be. The result? The average citizen feels like the system is stacked against them. Like the state's priority is avoiding offense rather than upholding order. That if you follow the rules, you'll be punished harder than someone who breaks them, especially if doing so fits a political narrative. And that brings us back to the border. The government's approach to illegal immigration isn't just ineffective, it's actively worsening the crisis. You have thousands arriving weekly, often with no documents, no background checks, and no clear path for processing. They are housed, fed, and often protected by legal shields that prevent any kind of swift deportation, even in cases involving criminal behavior. Let's be very clear here. This isn't about xenophobia or fear of the other. This is about control, resources, and public accountability. It's about a state that has lost the ability, or perhaps the will, to manage its own entry points, where the idea of sovereignty has become so diluted by international treaties and political optics that border enforcement is now considered controversial. And what does that mean for British citizens? It means that schools are overcrowded, emergency services are stretched, housing becomes scarce and unaffordable. Communities are reshaped overnight, often without consultation or consent. And when people voice concern, they are met with condemnation, not answers. So the frustration builds. Quietly at first, then loudly, then physically. Riots don't erupt out of nowhere. Mass protests don't just appear. They are built, layer by layer, through neglect, silence, and disrespect. And right now, people feel like their country is being reshaped without them. Like their taxes, their neighborhoods, their institutions are being handed over to a vision they never signed up for. Meanwhile, the government insists everything's under control. You'll hear phrases like long-term strategy or balanced reform. But no one can explain what that means in practice, because in practice, things are getting worse. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. And the few who dare to call it out are labeled as reactionary or extreme, when in reality they're just stating what's already obvious. Because how do you argue with the facts? Crime is up. Confidence in police is down. Public services are stretched beyond recognition. And the divide between political messaging and on-the-ground reality is now a canyon. One side is writing speeches about inclusion and global cooperation. The other is watching their town center shut down and wondering how they're supposed to feel hopeful. There's a kind of madness in the way all this is being normalized. Because Britain isn't in denial anymore, it's in performance mode. A nation pretending things are fine, while quietly reshuffling the deck behind the scenes. Managing decline like it's a PR campaign. Shuffling criminals back into society. Pretending the riots are isolated events. Redefining what safety means so it aligns with failure instead of fixing it. And the people? They are catching on. They are seeing that this isn't just about one party or one policy. It's systemic. It's strategic. There's a deliberate culture containment now, where problems aren't solved, just reframed. Where citizens are expected to adapt to chaos instead of being protected from it. That's why there's a real sense that the social contract is broken. Not strained, not damaged, broken. Because when people stop believing that the system will protect them, they stop participating in that system. They stop cooperating. They stop voting. They stop hoping. And at that point, what's left? This isn't just political. It's emotional, psychological, a deep erosion of trust that no government rebrand or campaign promise can fix. Because trust isn't won through press conferences. It's earned through action. And right now, the only consistent action people see is retreat, appeasement, and excuses. This is how a country unravels, not through explosions, but through exhaustion. Because people can only carry so much before something snaps. They can only be told they are safe while living through violence for so long. They can only be taxed while watching their services collapse before they stop playing along. The warning signs aren't subtle anymore. They are everywhere. And unless something changes, radically and immediately, Britain isn't just facing a tough few years. It's staring down a full-blown transformation into something unrecognizable. A place where law has no teeth. Borders have no meaning. Leaders have no shame. And people have no faith. So now the question is this: how far does it go? How many more riots? How many more criminals released early? How many more knife attacks, broken shops, burnt-out precincts, and press conferences promising investigations that, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on this situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. Never lead to action. Because if the current trajectory continues, Britain won't just be in crisis, it'll be in freefall. And not the dramatic, cinematic kind. The slow, grinding, spirit-breaking kind where people wake up one day and realize the country they love doesn't exist anymore. It was managed into the ground. And if that sounds dramatic, it should, because this is dramatic. This is a state of national emergency, dressed up in bureaucratic language and media silence. The time for quiet concern has passed. The only thing that matters now is whether people speak up loudly and demand better. Demand real reform, real border control, real consequences, real leadership. Because Britain deserves better. And the people living in it, they are not crazy. They are not extreme. They are not wrong for being angry. They are just tired of being ignored. It's wild how silence has become policy. You can feel it, can't you? That weird hush from those in charge, like they're trying to ride this out by saying as little as possible. As if silence will somehow undo the riots. As if ignoring the public's outrage will magically fix overcrowded housing, re-offend rates, and spiraling crime. It's a political equivalent of closing your eyes during a car crash and hoping it's all over when you open them. But here's the thing, it's not over. Not even close. In fact, it's getting worse and faster. Because Britain isn't just dealing with one crisis. It's stacking them like Jenga blocks, one unstable policy on top of another. And sooner or later, it's going to come crashing down. You can't release tens of thousands of inmates early under a scheme like SDS-40, many of them violent, some radicalized, and act surprised when the streets descend into chaos. That's not a glitch. That's a predictable result. This isn't hypothetical. It's not future doom-mongering. It's happening now. You've got convicted criminals being released after serving less than half their sentences, walking back into communities with no rehab, no oversight, and no plan. And what's the government's answer to that? Reintegration. A sanitized word that looks great in reports, but doesn't mean anything when you're the one living next door to someone who should still be behind bars. There's no public reassurance, no firm stance on crime, just more doublespeak. And while they play PR chess, real people are paying the price. Shopkeepers closing early because they don't feel safe. Women avoiding public transport after dark. Parents wondering why their kids have to grow up in a postcode where sirens are louder than school bells. Let's not forget, this breakdown didn't happen in a vacuum. It was built over time, brick by brick, through soft policies, empty promises, and leadership so allergic to controversy that it let crisis fester instead of confronting it. And nowhere is that more obvious than with immigration. Now, yes, immigration has always been a complex issue, but complexity doesn't mean chaos. And what we're seeing now, it's not complexity. It's a government that's completely lost control of its borders and won't admit it. Thousands of illegal arrivals every single week. Many with no identification, no documentation. Some with criminal histories that would make your skin crawl. But they're not detained. They're released into towns, into cities, into communities that are already stretched to the limit. Ask yourself, what's the plan here? Because the system is buckling. Services are overwhelmed. Local councils can't cope. And the government's only move seems to be silence and slogans. Meanwhile, the rest of the country is stuck watching their neighborhoods transform overnight, with no vote, no warning, and no say. Is it any wonder people are protesting? But here's where it gets even darker. The moment citizens speak up, they are treated like the problem, accused of stirring tension, of being anti this or phobic that, all for raising concerns that any sane society would treat as valid. It's not fear-mongering to want secure borders. It's not hate speech to ask why criminals are being fast-tracked back into your neighborhood. That used to be called common sense. Now it's a liability. And if you're waiting for the courts to offer some backup, don't hold your breath. Because the judiciary? That's a whole other mess. Sentencing has become a punchline. Judges are more likely to hand out suspended sentences than actual prison time. And when they do hand out real time, it barely means anything thanks to early release policies like SDS-40. Let's not forget the bigger picture. Violent crime is up. Knife attacks are becoming normal. Property damage, arson, assaults rising across the board. And instead of tackling it head-on, the people at the top keep talking about root causes, as if vague sociology is going to make people feel safe walking home at night. You know what makes people feel safe? Enforcement, boundaries, consequences. And yet, all those things are disappearing. Always being replaced by what amounts to policy theater, grand speeches, task forces that don't enforce, reforms that don't change anything. It's all performance, and the audience is losing patience. And while all this plays out, the economy's circling the drain. It's not just about immigration and crime. It's about the ripple effect that bad governance has on everything else. Inheritance taxes are crushing farmers and small businesses. Shops are shuttering not because of online competition, but because it's not profitable or safe to stay open anymore. The insurance premiums alone are enough to bleed them dry. Public services are crumbling. NHS wait times stretch into months. Infrastructure is aging and ignored. And people are expected to keep paying more in taxes while getting less and less in return. It's like being stuck in a subscription service you can't cancel, and every month the benefits shrink. And still, the government keeps insisting it's all fine. They talk about balancing priorities. about long-term strategies. But where is that strategy? Because if this is a plan, it's hard not to wonder if the goal is managed decline. Just steer the ship as it slowly sinks, and hope no one panics before election season. But people are panicking. They are waking up, and they are not interested in being managed anymore. That's why there's unrest. That's why barricades are being torn down and protesters are out in force. Because there's a feeling, deep and growing, that no one's listening, that leadership has turned away, that national security, identity, and law have all been traded in for political safety and international favor. And look, we're not talking about some nostalgic fantasy of the past. We're talking about basic expectations. Safety, stability, accountability, things every functioning society should guarantee. Things Britain used to guarantee. But now it's a free-for-all. A country ruled by caution tape and risk assessments, where every real problem gets deferred until it explodes, and then the explosion gets blamed on the people who dared to notice. And that's the real tragedy. Because Britain wasn't always like this. There was a time when the system worked, when laws had weight, when leadership had backbone, when immigration was managed, crime was punished, and the courts didn't hand out second chances to extremists or gang members. That wasn't utopia. It was just structure. And now that structure is cracking. And everyone knows it. You can feel the tension in the air, the sense that something big is coming. Because people can only be pushed so far. They can only be ignored for so long. And the more the government gaslights its own citizens, the more those citizens stop caring about what's legal and start thinking about what's necessary. That's the moment you reach a crossroads. When trust breaks. When the public stops asking for help and starts looking for alternatives. Some of them not so pretty. The government wants to manage decline? Fine. But they better be ready for what happens when the public decides not to go down quietly with the ship. Because people are done. Done with crime waves. Done with empty prisons. Done with open borders and closed mouths. Done with being told their concerns are outdated. Done watching their country rot from the inside while being told it's all just growing pains. This isn't growing pains. It's systemic failure. And it's no longer a matter when things will break. They already are. The only question left is whether anyone in power will stop pretending long enough to do something about it. And here's the kicker. The people who broke it still think they're the ones qualified to fix it. The very leaders who signed off on early release schemes, who watched border control buckle under its own weight, who let extremists slip through the cracks in the name of tolerance. Now they're holding press conferences talking about restoring order. As if anyone believes them anymore. As if they haven't already torched every ounce of credibility they had left. The public isn't fooled. Not by the spin. Not by the token arrests or carefully staged walkabouts in hard-hit communities. Not by the sudden calls for national unity right after months, years, of division, neglect, and denial. Because when trust is gone, it doesn't come back just because someone says, "We hear you." Let's talk about the hearing. Politicians claim to be listening. Civil servants say they are monitoring the situation. But where was that attentiveness when tens of thousands of foreign nationals with criminal pasts were ushered into the country with no vetting? Where was the concern when families reported rising violence, when shopkeepers were targeted, when ordinary people were harassed for simply asking what the rules were? You want to know what people are hearing? They are hearing the sound of glass smashing during another isolated incident. They are hearing emergency sirens more than they hear any words of assurance. And the silence from government? That's deafening. Let's not mince words. This isn't about isolated policy failures. It's about a complete abandonment of responsibility. Britain is being led by people who no longer govern. They manage, like risk consultants, like PR agents, focus on optics, terrified of headlines, obsessed with avoiding accountability. Take the courts again. Because it's not just about leniency, it's about imbalance. There's a growing sense that the law doesn't apply equally anymore. That there's a two-tier system, one for those who follow the rules, and another for those who exploit the system. Citizens defending their property, prosecuted. Repeat offenders with multiple violent charges, probation. Law-abiding taxpayers calling out the double standards, labeled problematic. Extremists, handled with kid gloves in the name of reform. The judiciary has turned into a hall of mirrors. And the result is a public that feel betrayed, not just by politicians, but by the very mechanisms of justice that are supposed to be blind, fair, and firm. That illusion is shattered. And while institutions rot from the inside, what's happening outside? Real-world consequences. You feel it every time you walk down a high street full of boarded-up shops. Every time you see another community center turned into temporary migrant housing. Every time a mother has to explain to her kids why they can't play in the park anymore. It's the kind of collapse that creeps in slowly until one day it's the new normal. And the economic thread? That's unraveling just as fast. Farmers are being crushed by inheritance taxes. Middle-class families watch generational wealth evaporate just trying to pass down property. Small business owners are squeezed by rising energy costs, absurd insurance premiums, and street crime that no one will investigate. Yet somehow, the government still manages to redirect billions into migrant resettlement programs, legal fees for deportation appeals, and NGOs that fight harder for criminals to stay than for citizens to feel safe. Priorities? Completely upside down. It's reached a point where even talking about it feels surreal. Like, surely, someone must be paying attention, right? But no, what you get instead is pageantry, political theater, theatrics about green transitions and digital innovations, while the country falls apart at the seams. They are giving TED Talks on climate goals while citizens can't afford to heat their homes. They are hosting roundtables about equity while police abandon entire neighborhoods because they are under-resourced and overworked. And here's where the anger morphs into something more dangerous, disillusionment. Because when people no longer believe in the system, they disengage. They stop voting. They stop reporting crimes. They stop expecting anything from the government. And that's when the vacuum grows. That's when fringe ideologies move in. That's when order collapses into chaos, and chaos becomes a backdrop for something worse. You don't have to squint to see the warning signs. There are already rogue groups forming. Localized vigilante networks stepping in where police won't. Online forums where citizens organize outside the reach of government platforms. And this isn't some edgy rebellion. This is a desperate response of people who no longer believe the system is theirs to fix. It's dangerous, yes, but it's also inevitable in a country where the gap between the governed and the governing is now a canyon. People want to believe in their nation. They want to feel pride, security, belonging. But how can they when every signal from above tells them they're an afterthought? That their safety, identity, and voice are secondary to political games and international diplomacy? Let's not forget, none of this is an accident. The chaos we're seeing is the outcome of deliberate choices. Choices to release dangerous criminals. Choices to prioritize image over enforcement. Choices to open borders without building infrastructure to support the influx. Choices to demonize dissent instead of listening to it. And now the bill has come to you. The protests, the riots, the growing radicalization of both the left and right. This is what happens when leadership fails. When government no longer represents the people, it starts to fear them. That's where we are now. A political elite terrified of the population it claims to serve. And instead of reconnecting, they double down on spin. But spin can't fix broken windows. It can't undo violence. It can't bring back trust. The public doesn't want more slogans. They want results. Real border enforcement. Real sentencing. Real protection of their homes, their jobs, their kids' futures. And until they get that, the chaos won't stop. It'll spread. Because a nation without justice is a nation without peace. A nation without sovereignty is a nation without direction. And a nation that refuses to face reality is a nation that's already lost the plot. So what now? That's a question everyone's asking. Because there's no easy fix. No quick U-turn. But there's a path, if leadership has the courage to take it. Start by ending SDS 40. Reinstate full sentencing. Let prison mean prison. Secure the borders with more than a press release. Stop releasing migrants into communities with no accountability, no vetting, no plan. Prioritize the people already here. The taxpayers, the citizens, the forgotten majority who've been paying for this decline with their safety and their wallets. And stop pretending this is all just a phase. It's not. It's a crisis. And it deserves to be treated like one. Because if things keep going the way they are, Britain won't just be worse off. It'll be fundamentally unrecognizable. And once a country loses its identity, its safety, and its trust in institutions, how do you get any of that back? That's the real question, the one the government won't answer. But maybe you will. Drop a comment below. Tell us what you're seeing in your community. What's changed? What's broken? What needs to be fixed before it's too late? Like this video if you think it's time for some honesty. Share it with someone who needs to know this isn't just happening in the headlines. It's happening on the ground every single day. And subscribe to the channel if you want more of this. No spin, no censorship, just the truth as it unfolds. Because if no one else is going to say it, we will.